It's the International Soccer Preview. We are Soccer Files Canada. Welcome to our continuation of Series 19. This one looking at the players of the 2023 Asian Cup. This episode is part 2 on the players of Syria. Final selections and starter predictions. Here we go. Hello, we are back for part 2 of our mediacast on the players of the 2023 Asian Cup. The final roster is released and we are looking at Syria selections. Some big surprises coming up. In part 1, we compiled a list of players and their likelihood of reaching the final squad. This was based mostly on their participation over the past 2 years, but we did consider a few other factors as well. At the end of part 1, we said that we would review the list that we created in that part, and now that the final squad has released, we can do that. So we will point out any surprises, any notable non-selections, and there are some, any surprise inclusions, and new players. And there are some of those too. We also said we would cover any injuries, actually not many of those for Syria. Okay, so we'll do all those things as we go through the list again. And in the end, we'll also boldly predict our starting lineup as best we can in the Spotlight Review. Okay, let's jump in and we'll begin with a little team information before we begin here. On the squad and the game. So teams were allowed to bring 26 players to the tournament. Syria selected a preliminary squad of 33 players, and so they had to cut 7 of these to create the final squad. Also, we did do our previous podcast before the World Cup qualifiers in mid-November, and so we do have that information to help us determine who will be the starters. We also have 2 pre-tournament friendlies that they played recently. However, I checked several different sources for the lineups and information on these games, but really very little information was available, so much so that we can't report on these 2 games. So just the World Cup qualifiers available to us there. Let's move on to the list, and the list that we created in part 1, and see who was selected. So we'll remove that name from the list, the previous manager, and we will focus on the current manager, Hector Cooper, and we will consider him selected for the squad because he was not replaced before the tournament began. For goalkeepers, we had likely candidate. Sorry, I'm looking at the wrong list here. For goalkeepers, we had likely candidate Ibrahima Alma. In fact, we had 3 likely candidates. Ahmad Madania was the other one, and then Shahar El-Shakur, the third of those 3 likely candidates. We also had 3 possible candidates: Taha Moussa, Maxim Saraf, and then Abdul Latif Nassan. So 6 candidates to choose from here. Most teams brought 3 goalkeepers, but in fact, Syria brought 4. So they did bring Ibrahima Alma and Ahmed Madania, the first of the 2 likely candidates. However, the third one, Shahar El-Shakur, was not selected for the squad, so a bit of a surprise there. However, 2 of the possible candidates were, so Taha Moussa selected and Maxim Saraf. So 4 goalkeepers being brought to the cup. Let's move on to the central defense. And here we had many candidates. We had a definite candidate in Thayer Kruma and a likely candidate in Omar Al-Madani. And then we had a whole bunch of possible candidates. Let me see, that is 6 candidates there. And I'll just name them. Muyad Al-Kuli, Yusuf Mohammed, Faris Arnaout, Saad Al-Ahmad, Abdullah Al-Shami, and Abdul Razak Al-Mohammed. And as if that wasn't enough for them, we have a new candidate being added. We also had 4 candidates at the possible but unlikely level and 1 at the seemingly off the squad level. Fortunately, we don't have to complicate things by introducing them because none of them were chosen. However, the new candidate, I'll give it away right now, was chosen. Alham Usu selected for the squad, so I'll give a little bit of information about him. He is 23 years old and actually played 1 cap for Sweden just in 2022. He was born in Sweden and kind of raised through Swedish clubs, especially Häcken in Sweden. Now he's with Slavia Prague in the Czech Republic. So again, was with Sweden in 2022. New to the preliminaries, or new to the squad, never appearing for Syria before being named to the preliminary squad here. So Aham Usu, one of the candidates selected. Let's go back to the top and see if our definite candidate was selected. Tahir Kruma, and he was, as was our likely candidate Omar Al-Midani. Among the possible candidates, only Muyad Al-Kuli was selected. However, 2 of them did make the preliminary squad, but not the final cut. And that was Saad Al-Ahmad and Abdullah Al-Shami. Again, preliminary squad, but not the final cut. So pretty busy section there. And they end up bringing out of that crowd of players just 4 that should be central defenders. I have them in the wrong spot on the graphic, but 4 central defenders, which actually is 1 less than usual, but then they brought 1 goalie more than usual. Let's move on to the left backs, and we had a definite candidate in Khaled Kurdagli, and 3 possible candidates in Moyad Al-Ajan, Yusuf Al-Hamwi, and Karam Omran. We have a new candidate here, but I'll just go through the list first. Khaled Kurdagli, our definite candidate, was selected, and among those 3 possible candidates, only Moyad Al-Ajan was selected. But as I said, a new candidate here, and it is where did he go? Oh, sorry, no, we don't have a new candidate here. Just the 2, and that is the usual amount of players of left backs brought to the cup. Let's move on to right backs then, and we have a likely candidate in Abdul Rahman Weiss, and a possible candidate Hussein Juwaid. And Weiss was selected for the squad, but Juwaid wasn't. So just 1 right back being brought. But we do have a, I think it's a left or right attacking midfielder filling in for this position. Okay, in the midfield we had no candidates for general or versatile midfielders, but we have 1 added to the squad. I'll just make a quick note of it because he was added to the preliminary squad and then not selected. So it is Malak Janir. So he's just 20 years old. We don't have a lot of information on him, and perhaps a candidate for the future. So as I said, selected for the preliminary squad, but new to the roster there, but not selected for the final squad. So we can move on to defensive midfielders, where we have 1 likely candidate in Kamal Meishe, and 4 possible candidates in Ezkiel Ham, Ahmed Al-Dali, Sobi Shofan, and Mohamed Kruma. So the likely candidate, Kamal Hamese, was selected for the squad. Only 1 of the possible candidates, Ezekiel Ham, was selected, but the three other were not. And do we have any new candidates here? I believe we do have one. Yes, we do. Jalil Elias added to the preliminary squad. And he's an interesting case, actually. He's 27 years old, so a bit late joining the squad, but he's Argentinian. And he was born in Argentina and currently plays for San Lorenzo. I say currently, but actually he played until 2023. So I think he may be without a club. Anyway, he has been with clubs in Argentina and some of the biggest ones too. Newell's Old Boys from 2015 to 2018. So kind of an exciting addition to the squad, Jalil Elias. Okay, let's move on to central midfield. And we had likely candidate Anez Muhammad. Oh, sorry, Muhammad Anez. And we had four possible candidates here, make that five. Ahmed Ashkar, Simon Amin, Elmar Abraham, Oliver Cascawo. I'll say that again, Oliver Cascawo. And finally, Mohamed Rihanieh. Only one of those possible ones were selected. I'll get that out of the way right here. That's Elmar Abraham, the brand new player to the squad. None of the others were. And then Muhammad Anez, a bit of a story. So he was a likely candidate here. He was selected for the preliminary squad. But not selected for the final squad. However, Mohamed Osman, who we'll meet shortly, withdrew injured from the squad. So Muhammad Anez was brought back in. So he is selected for the squad, although not initially. So just two of those six central midfielders selected. So three defensive and two central midfielders. And we move on to left and right midfielders. This position is not used that much anymore. In fact, we had no candidates as left midfielders. We had two candidates at the possible level for right midfielders. That was Ayman Akil and Hamza Al-Kurdi, but neither of them were selected. So we move on upfield to the left upper quadrant of the field, left wingers, attacking midfielders, and perhaps even left forward. Here we had a definite candidate in Amro Genyat and a possible candidate in Muhammad Al-Marmour. Amro Genyat was the player I mentioned earlier. He actually doubles as a right back. He's coded as a left winger, but we'll have to see if he does that, because he seems to be playing on the right more. But anyway, Amro Genyat selected for the squad, and Mohamed Al-Marmour is just like Muhammad Anez before. He was selected for the preliminary squad, but didn't make the final cut. However, he was recalled to the squad to replace the injured Mohamed Al-Halak. So he is selected, Mohamed Al-Marmour. Okay, that is the left side. And on the right here, we have two candidates. We had a definite candidate in Mahmoud Al-Mawas and a likely candidate in Mohamed Al-Halak, who we just mentioned. And sorry, we have three candidates. The other one is Hossein Aish. Okay, well, some shocks here. First of all, we'll deal with the one we've dealt with before. So I said at the beginning we didn't have many injuries to deal with. That was true. There was only one player at the possible level listed as injured. But actually, before the tournament, we had three players going out due to injury. So Al-Halak was one of them. So he was selected for the squad, but then he withdrew from the squad injured and was replaced by um, uh, Almar Moore, as we saw. But a bigger story yet is the non-selection of the definite candidate Mahmoud Al Mawas. So absolutely shocking, because he was a starter as well in this position. Okay, let's move on to the forward line, and that begins by attacking midfielders. And here we have one likely candidate and five possible. So the likely candidate is Omar Kribin, and Fad Youssef is the first of the five possible. Mohamed Osman, Ammar Ramadan, Ibrahim Hessar, and Mustafa Janeed. So our likely candidate, Omar Kribin, was selected. And the first of the possible candidates, Fad Youssef, also selected. Mohamed Osman was selected for the squad, but withdrew injured on January 4th and was replaced by Mohamed Anez, as we saw. So he is out, and Ammar Ramadan was selected, and Ibrahim Hessar also selected. So four candidates for a position that they use only half the time there. But I suppose these players would, um, the plan would be for them to fill in other positions. Okay, next we move on to the actual forwards. And here we had three likely candidates: Omar Al Somah, Ala Al Dali, and Yasin Samaya or Samia, and the possible candidate, Mardikian. So some really big surprises here. Basically, the three likely candidates, none of them were selected, especially shocking in the case of Omar Al Somar. He has 38 caps and 20 goals. I think both of those numbers are slightly higher because I haven't updated them, but the big scorer, he had only started 6 of their 16 games, but was really expected to come. He was the captain as well, so a real shocker there. Ala Al Dali was not selected either, but he was brought in to replace a player. So, by the way, all three of them were named to the preliminary squad and then not selected. But Ala Al Dali came in to replace him, and Yatin Samia also selected to the preliminary squad. Sorry, I got a little ahead of myself. I should have said also that Mardikian, the possible candidate, was selected for the squad. However, he withdrew injured, and it was he that Ala Al Dali replaced. So what we're left with is just Ala Al Dali as the only forward. So no surprise that they brought in some new candidates here, and we'll take a look at them. Pablo Sabac is the first of them, and the second is Antonio Yakub. We'd better take a look at them because I wouldn't. Obviously, they'll probably be using these players, given that they brought no other forwards. Pablo Sabac is 26 years old, and he's Colombian. He was born in Colombia and plays for La Equidad in Colombia. Actually, he's played all over South America for Alianza in Peru. And just like the previous candidate, the new candidate we met, played for Newell's Old Boys there. So Jalil Elias, I'm not sure if the years line up there. Yes, they were on a team, both of them, in 2021. So kind of an interesting reunitedness, fullness. I'm not sure what the noun form of that would be. Anyway, Pablo Sabac also played for Tondela in Portugal on loan, so quite an experienced player. Wouldn't be surprised to see him on the field, but that's just speculative. Antonio Yakub, the other one, is Syrian, is Swedish. I don't know if he was born in Sweden, but all the clubs he's played for have been in Sweden, and he's just 21 years old. So again, some exciting players added, but some shocking players left off the squad. So that's going to make our spotlight review a bit more difficult. But we are finished our run through the list, and we do move on to our spotlight review, our guess as to who are going to be the starting players. So we begin with manager Hector Cooper, so we'll consider him a starter. For the goalkeepers, we thought it actually would be or might be a rotation between Ibrahim Alma and Ahmed Madania, but Alma started both of the World Cup qualifiers, so now we're going to nominate him as a starter. He is number one, both as a goalkeeper and his shirt number 2. In central defense, we're actually pretty confident it's going to be number 5, Omar Al-Medani, and number 13, Thayer Krumer. But they started both the World Cup qualifiers as well. At left back, we have Khaled Kurdagli. And interestingly, the attacking midfielder Yusuf Fahad seems to be the backup to this position. He replaced him a few times, as we saw in part 1, and did so again, starting one of the World Cup qualifying games. So that's interesting. At the right back, we also have a kind of a more forward player, left winger Amro Genyat, the replacement, but he plays enough. Or he starts enough that we think it's going to be a rotation between Abdul Rahman Weiss and Amro Genyat, actually possibly both of them on the field at the same time, because we have seen Rice in a right winger role, and then Genyat is coded as a left winger, so we could see one as a defender and one as a winger, or even attacking midfielder at the same time. So we're putting them in blue. We think it'll be, in this case, we usually mean a rotation or one or the other, but in this case, we think it'll either be a rotation or both of them. Next, we have central midfielder Escriel Ham. Well, this is a very unsettled position, and it was Ham and attacking midfielder Osman in the World Cup qualifiers, but as we saw, Osman withdrew injured. So Ham seems the only real candidate here. We have him as a kind of a likely choice since he started the last 3, but he wasn't really the starter before that. So it's anyone's guess now as to who they will put alongside him. And that's actually going to be the case for most of the positions from here on forward. Left wing, we don't even have a candidate. It's very unsettled. Played mostly by out-of-position players, actually, and a different name every time, and that continued into World Cup qualifying, the 2 World Cup qualifying games, where 2 different attacking midfielders played it. So we don't really have a call here. If we have to suggest a name, we would probably say Al Marmour, if anyone. Okay, over to the right wing, and I'm afraid we can't put names up here. So Al Mawas was the sure starter here, and we definitely would have put his name down, but he shockingly wasn't selected. And they used the right back Weiss in the last game. So we're not really sure what they're going to do over there now that Al Mawas is gone. So no candidates there. For central attacking midfield, we do have 4 players brought to the cup, but they only use the position about half the time, and there's no pattern as to who it will be. So they did use the position once in the World Cup qualifiers, and it was Omar Kribin, who we'll mention below, but we don't really have a candidate for this position. Among the forwards, we would have had probably as likely starters Al Soma and Al Dali. especially after Al Soma started both of the World Cup qualifiers. But again, he was shockingly not selected. Al Dali was not selected either, but did come back in to replace an injured player. But obviously, he wasn't in the manager's plans. So since neither were selected, we have no idea who they're going to choose. Perhaps he has his eyes on some of the new players for these positions. Anyway, among all the attacking players, we just want to mention Omar Kribin as probably one who we'll see as a starter. Otherwise, we really don't know. So very unclear over here on the starting lineup for Syria. We'll just have to wait and see what happens in game one. Anyway, that brings us to the end of part two. So in part one, we made a list of candidates. In part two, we reviewed it to see who made it. A lot of surprises here, but we hope this brings you into the cup nicely, and enjoy your watching. We'd like to thank Naver Abidjan and Pixabay for the wonderful music you hear in this mediacast. The title is called Arabic Trap.